Well, hello and welcome everyone, Gotchaholic here, and today we are discussing more Higurashi Gou Theories. So, at the time of this recording, episode 20 just dropped, and feathering has been revealed to Satoko at the end of the episode. Now, in my last video, I actually predicted that Hani would be the one working with Satoko rather than feathering, but this begs the question, where is Hanyu? And this brilliant question, when asked at a later point, will reveal a lot more context as to what could actually be happening. Because as it stands, let's think about it. Just facts. Just raw exposition. For this is the perfect moment to fine-tune all our theories and make our final predictions for how Ryukishi is going to troll us. I mean, really. Satoko's just on the cover art for this. The freaking arc title is named after her. Right. Just like this was Higurashi New 2020 in a fucking remake. I don't trust it for a fucking second, neither should you. And so here is the facts. So in this regard, I believe it would be most beneficial to go murder by murder, looking at the finer details. And this different approach is simply because, I have been right about a lot of things, but I've also been wrong about a lot of things. So, for example, I figured Satoko might have been looping, but I felt like Rena was the main looper, when actually Satoko is clearly the main looper. And I also predicted that Hanyu was the one working with Satoko based on that fifth sequence murder when Satoko's killing Rika. It just seemed like Hanyu would most, align with Satoko's motives, because Hanyu was left in Hinamizawa, but I guess that was a dead end. So, instead, murder by murder, cold, hard facts. Let's go. Higurashi Gou. Alright, so, Arc 1, right? Let's think about this. Rena attempts to murder Keiichi, not Rika, and actually fails, and Keiichi is implied to have killed her. And we have Mion's dialogue to later confirm that they could not save Rena. However, her time of death is not actually clarified. So, let's look at this event. The first thing worth noting is that Rena actually brought a bunch of tools and crazy shit with her, like she's gonna torture Keiichi or something, right? So this is clearly a syndrome-induced Rena. Right. Though we still don't know if the syndrome is being inflicted supernaturally or via injections. However, Keiichi offers to help carry the lunchboxes and Rena refuses him, which kind of disproves a hallucination theory, to be honest, because it definitely seems like Rena actually brought all those tools with her. They even fell off the table. Though it is bizarre that Rena uses Keiichi's kitchen knife. And Keiichi fights back with a clock and ends up killing her. Honestly, I don't believe this, and I doubt you do either, because Keiichi and Rena are shown, they're like literally drawn in the same frame, like in the same state. And Keiichi later survives, and if honestly, he's like in worse shape than she is, so Rena probably was not dead at that point. And then we get into the same knife being used. So, let's apply facts based on what we know with Satoko. She is for sure looping at this point. So, she could have had feathering inflict the syndrome on Rena to throw off Rika, because Rika already suspects that Keiichi is paranoid in that fragment. And so Satoko is basically just trying to throw off Rika and keep her in loops ultimately. I'm sure feathering is talking her into doing a lot of this too. Or perhaps Satoko knows how to get those injections and she just injected Rena. Now this doesn't entirely matter. The missing syringe that we see a few episodes back could actually be a red herring, but this would mean that Rena actually did die in that scene and Satoko gets the knife and then goes and kills Rika and then herself after the fact. The only, obvious problem with this is why? Why not just kill Rika when she realizes she recognizes that Keiichi's paranoid and she knows how to fix the time loop? Did she think that just messing with the time loop would extend the time loop? And if she has access to that gun, wouldn't she just shoot herself? Or maybe she's never shot herself with that gun. And although not provable, it is still possible that Rena killed Rika and Satoko in Arc 1. But that would mean that Mion has something to do with something. But we can address this in Arc 2 later, so. But ultimately, the important questions to ask with this scenario is, for one, why was the same knife used to kill Rika and Satoko that was used to attempt to murder Keiichi? That's strange. And do know it was a day later. A day later. I'm actually going to say this again, and it's going to be freaky. We also know that Rika knew Rena attacked Keiichi, but she didn't remember herself being killed along with Satoko. Let's jump into Arc 2. I think the most important detail in Arc 2 is that Rika dies super early, and that Mion killed her. That was Mion. Mion has a syndrome, obvious by the ladder shaking scene. It was around the same time in Ep 8 that Rika disappeared. The only assumption is that Satoko had feathering infect Mion with the syndrome, or Satoko was able to inject her with the syndrome. The thing is, Rika dies, right? And a day later, Satoko is murdered next to Mion, supposedly. Now, we could assume that Satoko went to confront Mion to confirm that Rika was in fact dead, so she could safely reset. Okay. Now, I want you to imagine that scene with Satoko and Mion again. I'm sorry, but just think again. The gun is centered between them. And I do kind of find it hard that Satoko would shoot herself like that. Like, the choreography literally doesn't make sense. It almost seems like someone set that up. Now, let's steer away from speculation for a second and go back to cold hard facts. Let's actually go back to Arc 1 again. For a moment. Now, I'm not going to cover everything just to kind of stay on point, but Rena's dialogue to Keiichi before she tries to kill him definitely seems a lot like she's remembering an off-canon arc, a non-canon arc. If you know, you know. And she's also identifying symptoms of the syndrome in either herself or Keiichi, and applying that to when she left the village. And unless she was remembering previous timelines, there's no reason for her to know that. Alright, still take a step back from speculation and let's look at some facts. Let's look at the next episode, right? The first murder scene happened in episode 4, the end of it. So the beginning of episode 5, next episode, Rena talks to Keiichi, and they have a very ominous conversation. Rena brings up to Keiichi that not everyone appears how they seem. Near the end of this conversation, she even asks Keiichi what he thinks about her. It's like really creepy. She's like, "What about me, Keiichi-kun?" And this is like normal Rena, by the way. Almost as if she suspects someone else is looping, or that something, is going on. So real quick, I'm just going to address all of Rena's weird dialogue throughout the whole show right now, just because I want to kind of stay on point. So ultimately, we can jump to the end of Arc 3 for a moment. There's a protest scene with Oishi. The group's talking to them about, saving Satoko or whatever, and Rena mentions how, their path is the only way to get results, and she even explains that she's not able to explain why, which is kind of weird. And in the beginning of that festival scene in the third arc, Rena comments how she never thought they'd have times like these again. And then, of course, her dialogue with Keiichi at the very end of that arc, which it's also weird that Rena is surviving most arcs. We actually never see her die. But ultimately, this is implied that she remembers previous timelines. Maybe she's not necessarily looping, but if she has, some type of insight that Hanyu bestowed upon her, similar to how Hanyu bestowed Rika to be able to remember shit. I mean, this could also explain some things. There I go again with the speculations, but the facts are there. She says, Rena, that is, some pretty cryptic shit. Alright, so you detailed Arc 1. I'm just gonna address one more thing in Arc 2 before we get into Arc 3. The last thing that's weird about Arc 2 is the gun that Satoko has. Isn't that Takano's gun, actually? It seems kind of weird. And, like, the mountain puppy undercover fuckers were, like, on the camera, and it seems like they're inactive most of the time. But in Arc 2, it almost seems like that group was active. And Takano and the photographer disappear a few different ways, and then in the timeline that's, happy-go-lucky that we get the reveal that Satoko's looping in, Takano apologizing to Rika, they actually don't disappear at all, they just kind of go away. So, was that group active during Arc 2 or not? And it's not really fair to speculate, because we're not shown the exposition, so. And then the obvious last thing about Arc 2 is Mion. And this even ties back into Arc 1. Mion is very suspicious. She's also the one that gets the group back together to visit Hinamizawa. But just like Rena, we're not entirely, shown what they're up to all the time. They seem to play a very supportive role. It's just kind of like Hanyu. And if you know anything about Higurashi, the more supportive the role is, most of the time, the more shit they're up to. So, Arc 3. I believe the most important question is revolved around Keiichi, actually. Teppei and Rena are the only ones that don't attack Rika, but instead attack Keiichi, and they're both seemingly killed by him. So if there is a second looper, are they targeting Keiichi? Meanwhile, Satoko's centered more around Rika? And does the second looper have access to Hanyu? Or is Rika pulling a double whammy and Satoko has Hanyu's horn, which is Hanyu's powers, so that's why she's looping, and then Feathering is just kind of there influencing her? There's a lot of speculation with this particular set of murders. First question, did Satoko set up the situation with Keiichi? So in my previous video covering Arc 3, I speculated that Satoko was genuine, and maybe she was trying to give Keiichi the bear, like the doctor got it from Satoshi and gave it to her. It does seem like most characters are trying to protect Keiichi one way or another. Even Rena, perhaps, pretending to kill him, letting him live. So if we just look at the facts, it seems like Satoko definitely set up that situation, but for a reason outside of messing with Rika. She either wanted to spend her time with Keiichi, or she's trying to give him the bat, either to kill her uncle or to defend himself, something along those lines. But if she was setting that situation up to mess with Rika, then it would make no sense to send Oishi after Rika, literally right after that. The same bat and everything, so. It actually doesn't matter if Satoko was genuinely trying to spend time with Keiichi or she was setting him up. The thing that matters is that it wasn't tethered to Rika. Again, Teppei, just like Rena, attacks Keiichi. So either Feathering's messing with Satoko at this point, or there's a second fucking looper. And also, Mion's strike gets wrecked in the scene with Oishi, so it almost seems like if she was involved in Arc 1 and 2, for some reason that falls off in Arc 3. Because we actually see her die a few times, unlike Rena, who, scene 1, take it as you will, but pretty much is never confirmed to die. In fact, even Satoko dies a bunch. And Keiichi likely ends up dying at the end of the first arc, but again, he's another character we never actually see die. At least convincingly. And then, last thing about Arc 3 is Satoko is clearly faking her abuse with her uncle, but she's confirmed to be looping, so she probably remembers what an asshole her uncle is, so it could make sense that she's just trying to have Keiichi kill her uncle. For old time's sake. Now, honestly, the fact of the matter is, details like this aren't worth stressing over because it doesn't really matter. Whether Satoko is genuine or not, really doesn't matter to the story. Her motives could have been genuine or trying to set Keiichi up, and the outcome wouldn't have changed. The bigger question is revolved around Keiichi and why he seems to be the only one besides Rika that is being targeted, and that he's also the one that Mion is in love with, and seen surviving with Rena all the time, so. Well, that pretty much wraps up Arc 3. Now, I'm not going to spend too much time going over the events that happen after the first 3 arcs. In my Satoko Hen Theories video, I explain a lot about this portion of the story. And ultimately, I was wrong about one prediction. I felt like Satoko was just simply going to go L5 and kill Rika for the reset. I did not think she's going to meet Feathering or Hanyu, so Ryukishi's still keeping me on my toes. However, there's just no way Satoko is the only person looper. There has to be a second looper, and they have to be revolved around Keiichi. So that's my final guess. I could be wrong. You can take all the facts that we presented and come up with your own conclusion, and maybe you're right. After all, this is a theories kind of video. So feel free to theorize and leave your theories in the comments. Like, comment, subscribe maybe for more content. Subscribe to my non-existent YouTube channel. Donate money so I can buy more, make more theory videos. And with that, I hope y'all have a lovely rest of your day. May we figure out this mystery together. And once more, final predictions. There is a second looper, and it's fucking Rena or Mion. Later. Thanks for watching. Have a good time. Thank you. Come again. See you next time.